European leaders representing Germany, France, Italy, the UK, the European Commission and NATO have returned home from Washington after meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump at the White House this week. The EU leaders vowed to support Ukraine in peace negotiations with Russia. For more on this, we now connect with our Deutsche Welle correspondent Emily Leshner in Berlin. Emily, hi. Remind us, what was the main goal for EU leaders who touched down in Washington, and by that measure, did they achieve it?
Well, one of the key aims for the European leaders in attendance was getting Trump to agree to security guarantees for Ukraine should serious peace negotiations begin to take shape. And they did accomplish that. There aren't a lot of details yet about what these security guarantees would be, but Trump did say at least that the U.S. might be able to provide air support. And something else that the EU probably considers an achievement or at least a favorable outcome of the meeting is the fact that there was no mention of Ukraine ceding land to Russia as a prerequisite for starting peace talks. That is something that Putin has insisted on. He wants parts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, which are key strategic territories that could give Russia a military advantage down the road. And Zelensky, meanwhile, has repeatedly said that Ukraine is not willing to relinquish land for peace. A lot of people expected this to be a central point at the talks because it came up during Putin's very recent meeting with Trump in Alaska last week. And this is just days before Trump called this impromptu meeting. So in measuring how successful Europe was at achieving their goals or their aims at the meeting, they walked in determined to show unity amongst themselves and solidarity with Ukraine. They did that. They wanted security assurances from Trump, which they got, at least for now. So in that sense, I think it was a successful, they would consider it a successful trip.
Okay. Emily, is there anything else about this meeting that was particularly notable?
I mean, there were certainly some things happening in between the lines that observers picked up on. For example, the fact that European leaders, when in the meeting room, formed a semicircle around Zelensky that was interpreted as a signal of EU's protectiveness of Ukraine, because it appeared that the EU leaders were trying to shield Zelensky from perhaps having any more uncomfortable interactions with Trump after the very heated meeting between Zelensky, Trump, and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance back in February, where Trump and Vance accused Zelensky of not being grateful enough to the United States. That was the same visit where Trump criticized the army green casual wear that Zelensky has committed to putting on since the start of Russia's invasion. That wardrobe choice is regarded as a sign of Zelensky's solidarity with Ukrainian troops. But after that comment, we saw at this meeting that Zelensky was in a button-down shirt and tie, this time black instead of army green. But that change of dress was something that Trump picked up on and commented on, even though Kyiv has said there was no meaning behind the change in clothing. So there were certainly lots of things happening in between the lines in terms of what they were signaling at the meeting as well.
Okay. The US has ruled out NATO membership to Ukraine. How do the European leaders view this stance?
Well, Trump hasn't really wavered on this position, so I don't believe the EU leaders in attendance expected him to change his mind and this to be the meeting where that would happen. Even though Europe as a bloc supports Ukraine, there are EU leaders who have been hesitant to give the green light to Ukraine to join. So I don't think that was really something that they were seeking to get out of this meeting. But NATO chief Mark Rutte said that the security guarantees that were proposed in the meeting were akin to Article 5, which is NATO's mutual defense clause. And that states that an attack on one NATO country is considered an attack on the other members. So even without securing NATO membership, which again was not really on the table at this meeting, the EU is still finding ways to support and help Ukraine defend itself against Russia.
Okay, we leave it here. Thank you very much, Emily Leshner, reporting from DW Berlin.